Texas is where the West begins.
Oh, okay.
Well, actually, I would say I would go even deeper than that. Fort Worth. So you're
Okay.
in the Metroplex, Fort Worth. I do want to jump into the conversation, but first of all, you are here for your conference, Generation Hope, and we are happy to have you here. I just want to share a little bit about myself before we jump into the conversation. Why this was so, when I started reading this book, it touched me so in two different aspects of my life. It is one, my mother, who was running around a bookstore as a 7-year-old woman, she had a scholarship to Howard University in the 1970s. And she could not go to college. She had to make a choice whether she was going to have me or go to college. So thank God she chose me. And at that time, I believe she had a basketball scholarship. So that was amazing. And then full circle, here I am, well, in my adult age, I wanted to go and get my master's. And so I had to do it with a child. And so family is so crucial. Family is so important. So I just want to just acknowledge that what you have, I think, is going to touch every generation. I don't know. Yeah. Right.
Thank you. And thank you for sharing that. Is your mom here? Is this
Is she?
Hey, we're talking about you. I'm like, we should at least give you a shout out on there.
Yes, she did not know I was going to tell that story, and I said, "Gosh, I want to ask her about that story," but I know she's the type of person that is so private.
Yeah.
But that was a hard, I remember the years as growing up, that was a hard decision to have to
Yeah.
make because, as part of that generation that had an opportunity to go to college but couldn't go to college. Yeah. For the expenses or for the support and for the stigma, of being a mother and to leave your child behind, that's not something she wanted to do.
Yes.
But let's jump into some of the questions. Nicole, you have this book and it's deeply personal and deeply structural. What made you write it now? What made you decide to write this book now?
Yeah, so I wrote my memoir, Pregnant Girl, in 2021, and that was really exploring my journey as a teen mom, and it was even more personal, just talking about getting pregnant in high school and navigating all of the different things to get to and through college, and why I started Generation Hope. And in Pregnant Girl, I weave in the context, the policy context for my story through statistics and things like that, and I kind of touch on those things. And after I released it into the world, so many people were saying, I love the way that you did that, but I want to know more. Like, I want to understand more. There were, for example, there's a statistic I talk about in Pregnant Girl that, we were led to believe in the 1990s when I got pregnant, that we were in like the worst epidemic of teen pregnancy, that it was the highest rates of teen pregnancy. And in the book, I talk about the fact that that's actually not true. The peak of teen pregnancy rates was in the 1950s, and it was actually on the decline at the time that I got pregnant. But there was so much rhetoric. There was so many falsehoods being put out there to promote policies that were actually damaging for teen parents and single mothers and families living in poverty. And so, just those kind of tidbits and revelations in Pregnant Girl, I think people wanted to understand more. What else is connected to this journey of teen pregnancy and student parenting. And so I felt like, let me write a book that really unpacks all the different barriers that student parents face in experiencing economic mobility, whether it's race or money or childcare, and really give people a historical context for those barriers, the policy implications, and what we need to do differently to help remove those barriers. So it really came from, I think, people's interest being piqued by Pregnant Girl, and then being able to really go deeper in this book.
I want to I want to jump into something real serious right now too, because you mentioned Pregnant Girl, and I was thinking about this book that you mentioned, Pregnant Girl, and I was looking at what happened in Nigeria most recently, and that kind of startled me. That's an international, so we're dealing with the international politics and this thing that's trending right now about girls getting raped. And these girls are going to get pregnant. And these girls, they have dreams. These are students. They said these girls was coming. I don't know. Have anybody heard that story? okay, in Oro, Nigeria, sorry, in Arua, Nigeria. So they have what they coin a rape festival. And these are school age girls. And they're in certain conditions. Dealing with poverty, they're dealing with family issues. And then they had this festival, and all these girls are raped. And they mentioned that what's going to come out of this is a lot of young women that are probably going to be pregnant, are probably going to lose hope and dreams. So this is not just your book is going to not just going to be for this country. It's going to be an international phenomenon of dealing with the reality of whether they're getting pregnant out of love, whether they're getting pregnant out of community cultural traditions, stigmas. But these are young girls, and we have to eventually support. And this is one thing that Oprah, when she did her school in South Africa, this was what this was about, to give hope, dreams, opportunity to these young women. And here we are, some 20 years later, dealing with the same issue. And so I'm happy you brought up that book, because when I was reading that book, that's what I immediately thought of what's going on with these young girls. What opportunity are they going to miss out on? Where is the connection going to be from what we're doing here to what they're doing there? Nigeria right now is having a deep connection with the United States. So I'm just going to put that bug in your ear. You brought it up.
Yes. No, I think it's true. Well, one, when I started Generation Hope, I didn't anticipate we would get inquiries from, Africa, from South Africa, Nigeria, countries all over the world of people, folks saying we're struggling with how do we support teen parents in our communities. Yes. So you're absolutely right. And I always tell people, like, we started Generation Hope in DC, but I always knew that it needed to be in other communities across the country, and honestly across the world, because people do not know how to really step up and support young parents and to ensure that they do have hope and that they have a pathway to finishing high school and going to college and finishing college. It is, unfortunately, it's just not happening enough.
Mhm.
And I think even the story you told, the latest thing that has happened, this horrible, horrific thing in Nigeria, um, most people, when you think about teen pregnancy, they have no idea the complexities of teen pregnancy. They think it's sex crazed teenagers, right? And one of the things I tried to really illustrate in Pregnant Girl is that teen pregnancy is often about, it's not a deliberate choice, it's a lack of choice.
Mhm.
And I talk about sexual coercion as a form of intimate partner violence. I talk about, even in Student Parent, the very first story in the first chapter that I talk about is a young
Oh
woman,
Lord,
you know.
she got to me. I was like, after I went to the first page, I said she just knocked me out right off the bat. It was a
Yeah.
12-year.
Yes.
Tatiana.
Yes, Tatiana.
Oh
Um,
wow. Ooh.
so, I think too, we have to help people understand the complexities of teen pregnancy, and make sure that people are truly not seeing it as a black and white issue with a simple solution, which is, they should just focus more on their schoolwork. I mean, that's just not the reality that we see day to day.
Man, thank you for bringing that up. Um, you challenge the idea that the workforce alone is the solution to poverty, but we know that's not the case. It's deeper than that. That's just touching the surface. What are we getting wrong here? What are we getting wrong here?
Yeah, I think workforce feels like a convenient solution because it fills jobs. It often fills jobs that are, low wage, hourly jobs that we need to fill on some level. But it's also about determining for people who are navigating poverty what's possible for them, and dictating and prescribing what's possible for them, and really putting a cap on their potential. And that has to do with the bias and the stigma and the shame that we've attached to being, living in scarcity. And what I try to do in Student Parent is help people to understand, yes, it's important to get people into jobs, but do those jobs pay enough for you to feed your family? Do those jobs present opportunities for you to get promotions, to be able to increase your earnings? Do you have access to healthcare? Do you have access to, resources that can help you with childcare, right? Those are the things that actually help someone move into economic mobility. But just being in an hourly, low paid job is not enough to help a family traverse poverty. And so we have to really focus on, yes, help people get into jobs, but how do we help them to get an education that allows them to access those levers, right, that allows them to get a promotion down the line and be able to put food on the table. That's the real key. And that's why it's important that higher education is seen as not a separate thing but as a part of that pathway.
You mentioned, oh my gosh, you mentioned that, you know, entice. I think a lot of young people are enticed at the same time to go get the job and not look at the whole long term results and the impact of what higher education can do for you and your family. And I think it's part of it. Wages are coming up. They had to come up. Um, but I think that's misleading for a number of young people. You guys, when I came out of college, I'm just gonna put it out there. It was a long time ago. I was making $6.95 with a degree, okay? And so if they hear that, guess what they're that I'm not going to college, but they don't understand that we have to constantly tell the truth to young people because if they listen to that, I think it's a false reality. And I think what you're saying that not pushing them into jobs, but pushing them into that higher education and know the long term opportunity versus the short term. Does that mean?
Yeah, and I think, one of the things I tell this story in the book of I was speaking when I was doing book events around Pregnant Girl, and I was speaking to a group of teen moms in San Francisco. And one of the moms, she was really shy, and she said, she had a question, and she said, "Why are you so obsessed with college?" And I love that question. And I said, "You know what? I'm not obsessed with college. I'm obsessed with you having the choice to go to college." Because if someone is passionate about a career that doesn't require a college degree, I'm all for that. It to me, it's about freedom and it's about the ability to pursue what makes you happy. And if that requires a college degree, then I think you should have a clear pathway to get there. Right now, if you want to you want to go into a career that requires a college degree, it is so out of reach for you as a mom or a dad, right? And so I am all for you pursuing your passion. And if that is something that does require an associate's degree or a bachelor's degree, it's our job to remove barriers for you to get there. And at the same time, if you're interested in a career that doesn't require that, we've got to make sure you have a pathway to get there. And that's the issue is that, we don't give people choice. We dictate and we create barriers for them to actually do the things that they're passionate about.
And I think those barriers become even more paramount as you have a number of people that have chose higher education and especially I listened to one of your conversations and I think I seen it in the book where there's a lot of young people that do well as mothers, as do better. I think you had the stats that they even do better than the ones that are not teen parents.
Yeah.
What? Why is that?
I think, I mean, we have some of our staff here, and I know we have our program directors, and they can tell you, we are talking about highly motivated students because when you think about it, they have a mouth to feed or multiple mouths to feed. My daughter is here, who caught her mid-bite, but she's here. She is the baby I took with me to college. And all I could think about was I cannot fail because she deserves the best life that I can give her. The motivation is different, the drive is different. And so student parents do have higher GPAs on average than their peers. And I think it's because you're not just doing it for a career, that you want to do it because you're passionate about a career, but bigger than that, you have a little one that's looking to you and you know that they're depending on you to succeed. And that is a huge motivator.
You probably are not going to like my next comment. And it's not. It's not. I don't know. It's not. It's not in my list. I'm just going to say it. And maybe somebody out there may not like it, but I would encourage. What's the best way to put this? I look at the numbers fall in terms of birth. And so I talk to young people. I had my son when I was about 30. I did college and everything else. I did everything you could think of, studied abroad and everything you could think of. But some part of me wished I would have had my child young. Like you said, you had your child at what age?
I was 19.
19. A part of me wanted that, you know, because now you can. I'm not telling her to be a grandmother, but I know, right? But it's part of me like, man, I want to enjoy my grandbabies. Like my mom, she had me at 17. Yeah, I'm sorry, mom. I'm 50 now, so we can go ahead and tell business. But she's enjoying her grandchildren in their 20s. And not able to go, didn't go to college, but saw that all her children, all her children got a college degree. And that's something about that. And then she went back and got her degree in horticulture. Woo! Yes, her associate. So she's probably back there hiding, like, why you telling all my business? But I'm gonna bring her up here in a minute. So hopefully she's collecting herself to make comments when we get into the Q&A. But so I'm almost like I don't have a problem with young parenting, but I think you had something key is creating those pathways.
Yeah.
Now, what are the pathways? So I might not be politically correct, but um, you need to be reproducing. Did I say that wrong?
I don't think
Yeah, this is so not going to be
this
a
is
part
not
of
a
the
chapter in
conversation.
the book.
That's why it's good to come at this type of stuff because this is not going to be a part of the conference. This is just we're just real talking right now, and I'm trying to stay with my script, but I'm like, okay, she doesn't, trigger me somewhere along the way.
Well, I will just say, Narissa says all the time that there's a joke on TikTok about how parents will say, I'm not your little friend. Don't be talking to me. I'm not your little friend. And just we've gotten to the age where now I feel like we are each other's little friends. Yes, exactly. And a part of that is I think, I was young when I had her and we've grown up together. And so yeah, there are some benefits, I think, for sure.
But my child is 25. I'm like, hey, let's work on this thing here. Or are you going to get married? So I don't know. I'm gonna stop there because I'm going to take myself because I know this is I want to ask her. And I know we got short time, and I'm going to ask you about your grandmother. I'm sorry. I got to step away from the conversation real quick. I, honey, is it honey?
Yes.
I do want to. The reason why I tapped into honey, here I go again, taking stuff a little bit personal. Like, you weren't deeply connected to Honey.
No.
Honey lived close to Bethune-Cookman College, or yeah.
Yes.
And my grandfather, connecting the dots again, how do I connect to this beautiful young lady? Is my grandfather's name was Honey. That was his nickname. So Honey Grandma, my Honey Grandpa. And I was like, oh, again, we're connecting. I'm finding all these deep connections to her. Just like it just resonated from one chapter to the next. I was like, oh. And then it took me back to my relationship with my grandfather because my mother had me at a young age. I actually spent a lot of time with my grandparents. So I might be taking you back again, but um, talk to us about. I want to hear more about Honey real quick, and then I'll go back to my.
So yes, I talk about Honey in both books. So Honey is my grandmother. She was my grandmother on my dad's side, and I didn't really know her well growing up. I talk in the book about I knew her on a surface level, like through birthday cards and a phone call here and there. She came to visit us a couple times when I was growing up, literally a couple times. And then we went down to see her when I was 12. And my dad wasn't very connected with his family. So my disconnection was a part of his kind of disconnection. Um, and so I have been curious about her. She passed away when I was in college. And I was curious about her because I felt a connection. Despite all of that, I felt this deep connection to her. And she went to Bethune Cookman as when it was both a high school, and a college, or transitioning to a college, and just to understand the impetus for Bethune-Cookman, how my grandmother, as a Black woman, a young Black woman, um, growing up in a time where most women, Black women, were not going to high school in the United States. And that, even after completing high school, most Black women were working as domestic workers. There was no support around your pathway through high school or to college, for sure. And I was so intrigued by that. When my grandfather met her, she was already pregnant. She was going to be a single mom. So she was pregnant, and went on to have two more children with him, but essentially worked as a domestic worker up until she couldn't work anymore and then passed away. And so, what I explore in the book is the parallel of Bethune Cookman creating these pathways to education at a time that was so rare for, young Black people, particularly Black women, and also my grandmother's her own success being stunted at the same time, and what could have been possible for her, and feeling that deep connection to her. So I'm always intrigued by, if we had these supports in place, if we had real pathways, the brilliance, that we could see out in the world. And I think my grandmother is a great example of that. And I know she put passion into the things that she did. So I don't want to discount the ways that she did bring her brilliance into the world. But if it had been supported and fed and nourished, um, at, what would have happened? How would we have all benefited from that?
You- Amazing. That's why I wanted her to bring it. And I like how she brought the context of it. Why? Because my next question was, why did you feel that it was important to put it in the book? So thank you for summarizing. I really wanted to talk about honey. I'm sorry about it.
I love that question. I love talking about honey. And I love that your grandfather's nickname was Honey.
Oh yes, it just took me. It just brought so many emotions. You know, I'm not trying to read the book for you guys, but it's a great conference. If you're out there in the world, it's a great book study for groups, for organizations, to really center this and really think about your own past, your own, and how you connect with the community. So thank you so much. And sometimes we connect with family. What do people not understand about who student parents are? What do they not understand?
I think most people just don't know they exist. That's first and foremost. I mean, Generation Hope now does work, in addition to working directly with parents, we work with colleges and universities. And higher education as a system has a long way to go, and just naming and acknowledging and supporting and prioritizing this population. So I think the first, thing that people don't get right is how many student parents, are out in the world, in attending colleges and universities across the country, nearly 4 million. And I always like to say that does not include all of the millions of parents that would go to college if they felt like it was a real a place that was set up for them to succeed. So that's the first thing. And then I think the second thing you touched on earlier, which is they do well. They do so well academically. They're highly driven, highly motivated. They're already exhibiting so many of the leadership skills that people are looking for out in the workforce. They're juggling so many things, but they're 10 times less likely to graduate because our systemic failures across higher education and human services and all of the different systems. So we have to get it right, and so I think it's first acknowledging and knowing that these students are out there. The next thing is understanding that they have all the capabilities and the drive. We have students in our program earning for perfect 4.0s, and I think it flies in the face of the stereotypes that people have about teen parents and single mothers and single fathers and families in poverty. So I think those are some big key things. I see you're sticking to your script.
I might go away. I might drop this script in a minute. But my business partner said, Danya, stick to your script for once. Stop. You start going down a rabbit hole and going all kind of different directions, and your own experience and everything else start going. But you're very clear that the barriers aren't about effort; they're about systems. What are those barriers really telling us?
Well, what I hope people see, each chapter, as I said, is dedicated to a barrier. There are so many barriers, so I wasn't able to write about every barrier, but I really picked out some of the most significant barriers for student parents. What the barriers are telling us is that one, and what I hope people understand and take away is that these are long-standing barriers. I think without really diving deeper, you might assume, oh, childcare in the last few years since COVID has just become unaffordable. And for people to understand the historical roots of childcare being both unaffordable and not paying enough in this country, it goes back to the founding of our country. So really helping people to understand these barriers have been here. They've been here for a long time. They are baked into our system and the way that we do things in this country. They are not going to be solved by small investments or kind of chipping away at the surface. They really require us to upend the way that we've done things and adopt policies that really uproot um, a lot of these longstanding practices. And, I talk, for example, college and tuition not being affordable. We scholarships alone are not going to solve that issue in America. So while those are good and it's great, it has to be that and policy shifts that really create affordability for students across the country at scale. So I hope people take that away as well.
I'm happy Chantel said trigger. Okay, trigger alert, trigger alert. Uh, Affordability of daycare. You know, I think that's the elephant in the room at the end of the day is how do I go to college, pay for daycare, and then not now we got to talk about studying because we have to be able to study. We have to be able to have time to study, and those are the problems as a student parent that I faced was okay. I have to be at the child care, pay this much a week, and then be there at a certain time because they're closing the same, at 5 o'clock and 6 o'clock. So there has to be. You're talking about policy and understanding, and time and schedules and all those different things, those are real things that impact our ability and people being able socially aware. Like, you know, my daycare provider really turned nasty to me, like really nasty. And so those are discouraging points. And I want to probably wrap that around to Generation Hope. I think your organization can mentor people that are experiencing that because you just want to give up like somebody's talking to you nasty, ugly, and all those things. And I think that's your organization. Really, that's got to be somewhere in the backbone of your organization, is it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we talk about Generation Hope. I want it to be a place that says yes when everyone else is saying no. And out in the world,
Oh my God.
that's out in the
Wait,
world.
say that in rewind.
Rewind. We want Generation Hope to be a place that says yes when everyone else says no. And the reason for that is because of what you just described. If you are a young parent, if you are any parent that qualifies as other, single parent, under resourced parent, single father, you are coming up against these barriers in every place that you go. You're going to pick up your EBT, right? You're getting your TANF supports. You're going to apply for WIC, whatever it is. Even on campus, you're going into financial aid and you're trying to advocate for more resources. You're often treated badly. You're often looked down upon, and that's the shame that we've attached to the experience of navigating scarcity. And so we can't expect people to succeed in environments like that. And if we can be a place that opens the door and says, we want to hear what's going on, what's happening in your life, and let's figure it out together, that's when we see results. And that's why we have, a 62% completion rate in 6 years, which is on par with the national average for all college students. That's why our students are making GPAs above the 2.5. 30% of our graduates go on to get a graduate degree. So we're seeing that that works and it's important. And I think, childcare is a huge barrier. Childcare is often, it's a non-starter. If I don't have someone to watch my child, I can't go to class, right? I'm not going to be able to pursue my degree. So, we're often working with policymakers and college leaders to figure out how do we create policies that subsidize childcare? How do we create institutional policies and practices that have a drop-in childcare center? If I have an evening class, can the school set up a system where maybe you're partnering with the YMCA and I could come in just for the 2 hours I need for class that evening, drop my child off and go to class, right? So helping institutions and policymakers think creatively. It is not what I try to convey in the book, whether we're talking about college affordability or childcare affordability, it is not a matter of that's too much money. There is enough money, there are enough resources. It is a matter of prioritizing and investing in that something because it matters and because it's important to us as a society. So,
And not policy that takes money away from those people that they're trying to serve.
right.
Um, you insist that we cannot talk about students without talking about race. Why is that essential? I mean, that's heavy. I mean, you can't separate the two. I don't. I personally don't think that there's different experiences.
Yeah, I mean, what you'll see as a through line in the book, pretty much every single barrier, whether it's childcare, whether it is transportation and security, something that we don't talk about enough when it comes to folks who are navigating poverty, housing affordability. Every single barrier is traced back to race and how access to these things has been intentionally baked into our policies and practices as a country. And we're not going to uproot those practices if we don't acknowledge that. If we're going to talk about transportation insecurity, we have to talk about redlining. We have to talk about the fact that we've made it difficult for communities of color to be in spaces where opportunity lives. And until we are real about that, it's going to be very hard for us to connect them to opportunity and to really, for example, I talk about having satellite campuses for colleges in under-resourced communities. That is an intentional move to say, hey, we've done it wrong. We've missed the mark. We have created more barriers and hurdles. We have to come into these communities where we've cut off resources and we have to create real pathways for people to actually access things. So, one time I was at a campus talking about student parents and I was talking about race and I had a gentleman say, like, why do we always have to talk about race and why does it have to come back to race? And I gave the metaphor of, if we were all drinking from a pond and getting our drinking water from that pond, and we found out that that pond had some contamination, some, bad stuff had been put into that pond. We realized it. Okay, there's bad stuff in that pond. Let's stop drinking from it. But we now have the ripple effects of that, the after effects of drinking from that pond. Now we can either talk about that and say, hey, we've got to get real about it. We got to diagnose what all of us are experiencing so that we can fix it, or we can pretend like we never drank from that pond.
That cognitive dissonance.
Right. But even if you pretend you didn't drink from that pond, you're still living with the contamination inside of you. And so it's the same thing. We all are drinking from that pond. And just saying, no, we're not drinking from it anymore, and nothing, there's nothing lasting from that, doesn't take away from the fact that there are lasting impacts and that we have to diagnose and we have to treat it and we have to be real about it. And I think that, people think because we are not living, through slavery, we're not living in Jim Crow right now, that the after effects of that are not still here. And that's just not true.
The subjugation that we've experienced is still more so relevant than it has ever been.
Yes.
Before. Right. And so we look at higher education and we look at those opportunities and those pathways. And you've been talking about policy. You continue to talk about policy. Are there any policies that they're working on today that would change that would create those pathways? Do you know of any policy, any bills that are being produced? I know.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think what we're seeing, particularly at the state level, that's where opportunity is really living right now, most opportunity. For example, if you look at childcare, you look at New Mexico, the push to make childcare affordable across the state in New Mexico is encouraging. That's what we want to see more states doing. We even are pushing for one of the big issues when it comes to student parents in higher ed is most colleges do not track the parenting status of students. When I started Generation Hope, I thought, oh, I'm going to go around to all the schools schools in the DC area, and I'm going to ask them, tell me how many college students you have there that are parenting. And they said, we don't collect that data. And I thought, oh my gosh, you're collecting race, you're collecting ethnicity, you're collecting marital status. You don't ask people if they have mouths to feed, right? It seemed obvious to me, but that is not tracked across higher education. So seeing now that we have states like Texas, um, Oregon, California, more and more states starting to say this needs to be a mandate that colleges and universities are tracking the parenting status of their students, they're collecting that data, and then they're using that data to figure out how to better support these students. That's an example of policies that are really good because if you can start with data, then you can then say, now we have to create policies and supports. It's very easy for a college that doesn't track the parenting status of their students to say, we don't, that's not really an issue here. And I've sat across from college administrators who have said that we don't have that problem here. But do you collect the parenting status? Do you have that data? No, we don't have that data, right? So if I can ignore a thing if I don't collect data on it. And so that's a great starting point, right? From a policy perspective of let's require all schools in every state to track the parenting status of their students. And we are seeing policy momentum, for example, on that. There's a lot of other policies that we want to see bolster the child tax credit, for example, all of those things. But we're seeing a lot more opportunity right now, given the administration on the state level when it comes to policies that are going to really move the needle for economic mobility.
And I like how you wrap policy into the historical experiences because you mentioned Navajo and you talk about the Navajo in your book and you talk about their 160 years experience. I don't know the trek. I can't remember the exact passage, but I like how you talk about you wrap history and the current situation into what we need to do for policy. That's what I'm hearing. Is that true?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important for us again. I love history. Don't ask me to remember a date, but but I
The
love
Navajo, 160 years. It was this page in your book, 85. No, I think it was.
Yeah, don't quiz me on a date. That's why I wasn't a history major. But I love history, and I think for me, I don't see how we can figure out how to move forward if we don't understand where we've been and how we got here. So I talk about the Trail of Tears. I talk about
Yes.
indigenous
It's
folks
loaded.
having
Her
to.
book is loaded. Have you guys read it? Who read the book? So it's loaded, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's
It's a new release. So give us
okay. Yeah, yeah. You're gonna reread it. We're gonna reread it and have a lot of dialogue and discussion around it. A lot of reading groups around this book because it is very detailed. It is talking about policy. It is talking about history. It is giving stats, important stats, and I just commend you on the work that you put in. And it's a small book, but it's power packed. I mean, imagine, she's doing the trek, and not only African American, you covered indigenous. So I just think it's an amazing work, and I'm excited to continue to hand sell this book from the Doc Bookshop and into our community and engage those organizations that has that mission and vision in their mission and vision statement that discuss empowering youth. Well, this is what it looks like. This is what you need to have. We so often get a nonprofit and not understand the foundation of the work that needs to be done. And I think your book gives a very foundation of what nonprofits need to do, especially if they're going to empower families and empower youth.
Thank you.
Okay, let me see who's out there. Deborah Greger, you're gonna have to come up here in a minute. So, but any questions out there? Anybody have any questions? Because I can keep asking a whole bunch of questions. I don't want to keep asking questions because I'll.
Hi. So I copy edited two books last year on childcare, and one was very UK centric. It was a UK author. One was US based, and so being immersed in the numbers that I already kind of knew, how are you getting people to understand that subsidizing childcare actually increases all the money flowing through our community and into our tax base?
Yeah, that's a great question. I try to do that in student parent is helping people to understand it is fueling our economy, right? It is not just the morally right thing to do,
right.
but from a financial dollars and cents standpoint, it is going to fuel our economy. The other thing that I think people don't really know, and I learned even in writing the chapter on childcare, is how we compare to other industrialized nations. I think the assumption is that the very sparse amount of investment that we make as a country in childcare is comparable to other industrialized nations. And it's not. It's so far behind what other countries are doing to invest in childcare, knowing that it is an economic good. It is a public good, right? And I think that's a part of like the narrative and the educating that we have to do is helping people to understand other countries are doing it differently. They are investing in childcare. They're seeing the benefits of that economically all across the board. And that information is just not out there. I think we're led to believe, again, the scarcity mindset that there's just not enough money, right? It's just not enough money for us to do that. But other countries are doing it and they're seeing the benefits of it. And I think that's part of the education that needs to happen across the board.
I heard that conversation. I don't know, Penny. You know, Jasmine Crockett talked
Oh.
about that, but I'm not going to talk about that. I'm not going to throw my politics out there. I'm certainly covered behind that law. But anyway, talking about trauma. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I have a question. This is going back to an earlier part of the conversation about wages and about jobs that can be obtained with not necessarily having a college degree. And what we're hearing right now from our nation's leaders, and even here in Texas, is guiding Black and brown students, especially away from college education and into more vocational education and trade schools and getting jobs. And not that that's not important, but how do we combat that? How do we come back to say, because I was always taught college, college, college. You gotta go to college, you have to get your degree. That's what I teach at my home. You gotta go to college, you have to get your degree. I don't care what else they're talking about. You need your degree, because it was always taught at a certain time that it's important, especially for Black women. You need a college education.
Yeah.
But now the narrative seems to be shifting so heavily. And to your point, Tanya, earlier about wages, people are saying, oh, you have a college degree, but you're only making $45,000 a year, and I can go out and I don't
Be
know,
a serial
welder
entrepreneur and all
or
that.
do something else, and I can make, versus making $20 an hour, I can make $75 an hour. But so how do you what becomes then the value in education? I guess is where I'm going with that. I know what it, but
Yes. How do you talk about it? Right. Yeah. How do we counter that?
And how do, when you're getting that, especially, from the lens of the work that we do, we're very much touting that, but how do we get that pushback? How do we
Yeah.
address that?
No, it's a great question. And I would say, I started Generation Hope 16 years ago, and that was a narrative even 16 years ago. It has been bolstered by uh, the current administration and a lot of folks now. I talk about in the book, you know, most senators and Congress folks are not saying that to their children. So that is an indicator that college is still the best pathway to wealth building and economic mobility in this country. Um, we, I think Generation Hope has countered that narrative from the beginning, because we would go out and we would talk to people about, hey, we're helping teen parents go to college. And it never fails. There's somebody in the audience who says, well, why don't you encourage them to go to technical school, something more realistic, or vocational school, or, to be a mechanic, right? So that has been a pervasive undertone for a long time. And I think the way you combat it is with data, because very much like the rhetoric around teen pregnancy being at its height in the 90s, if you look at the data, that simply isn't true. And if you look at the data when it comes to college, you're going to earn nearly 1 million more over the course of your lifetime with a college degree on average. That's what we're looking at, right? That's the data. It's still the data. It has always been the data. And I think that's the way we counter it. We want to move with data and not with rhetoric. And I think that has benefited us as an organization, is to help people understand, one, similar to what I said earlier, we're not pushing our scholars to go to college. We're not pushing teen parents to go to college. They're coming to us and saying, I want a college degree. And it's our job to say, okay, let's remove the barriers for you to get there. But then two, the data shows that they will earn more money over the course of their lifetime. Their children are more likely to earn more money over the course of their lifetime. That's the data that I think we use to counter the narrative.
I want to add that her data comes with, to me, success stories.
Yes.
So I'm reading the success stories as well as seeing the interviews of a person that says, "Hey, I wanted to be a nurse, and I couldn't afford to be a nurse." I can't remember her name. She wanted to be a nurse, couldn't afford to be a nurse.
Yeah.
And she was in her nurse practitioner
Yes.
suit and all that kind of stuff. But her story and her inability to just afford college, and she said, "I think I know what it was. You guys paid 40%.
Yeah.
I think
She
she
was
would have
Abby. Is that Abby's
yeah,
story?
32,000. You know, I've been stalking so just
I was like, I don't think Abby's in my book, but we just did a feature on yes.
okay, I'm stalking.
Yes.
I'm stalking somebody. 32,000. You know, I start having flashbacks and everything when I listen to stuff. 32,000. She said, had I not had this relationship, like how much would it cost me to get this nursing degree? I think she said it was 32,000 a semester. Yes. And then she had to pay, and I guess when it was all done, 5 years. She read
Yes.
5 years. And she ended up saying that she only had to pay 40%. That's what your organization is doing. You know, there's so much to this book that I would just keep going. You know, I didn't cover the part that okay. I know I gotta wrap up, Donna. Okay. But this is very important right here. This is okay, I'm gonna put my little paper down now. This is very important right here. So she talked about first chapter ministry and the going back to school and all this the surface type of stuff, but again she goes back and push policy and how important policy is, how important data is. Like everything is covered in this book that we should this is going to be an election year. I'm getting ready, you know, it's an election year, you guys. There's enough information in this book that we can go back to each of our communities and demand more and say what we need in terms of supporting our community, supporting our child care providers that are in the communities and making it child care accessible. Again, it's not, they're trying to open up more child care because a lot of child care in Texas shut down because it's just that the politics behind it is so complicated. So I think everything in your book is so powerful, and I just want to thank you for giving me some more ammunition. That's all I needed.
Thank you.
And my politics in 2026 is going to be a lot different now, even more so different. You just added a lot of more stuff. Anybody have any more questions? Because I would jump into that chapter about ministry because the ministry and the what was the food? The potato
Casserole.
I almost
You can
said
put potatoes
I
in it.
almost said potato salad. Not the potato salad, Lord, no, not the potato salad. Casserole. She was talking about how did anybody read about that? About her about the casserole? You want to talk about that real quick before I let you go?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Yes. So I talk in the book. My son goes to an Episcopal preschool, and in the lobby there is a casserole ministry, which is little um, uh, casserole, dishes that you can. They're empty, and there's a recipe, and you can take it home, make the recipe, bring it back to the church, and they give it to a family that's navigating food scarcity and insecurity. And so I talk in the book about every time I go to pick my son up, it's empty, and then they refill it again, and that it's very popular. It's easy for people to grab that, to go home to make it. But the problem with the casserole ministry is it doesn't address the root cause of food insecurity in America. And I think it's emblematic of what we tend to gravitate towards, which are the easy surface solutions to the problems that we face as a country instead of addressing the root cause. And the root cause really gets addressed by policy and policy reform. So we've got to do the casserole ministries and the coat drives and the can drives, and we have to really advocate for policies that um, make it easier for families to put food on the table themselves.
Okay, I'm going to wrap it up, but I just love this personal conversation because you guys are going to have big things coming up for the conference this weekend with Generation Hope. Thank you so much, and I appreciate you being out here. I just feel like I'm just got more ammunition for, and I hope you guys feel like you have gotten more ammunition and just empowered to just take on what this weekend has to offer and what you can do in your respective communities. Thank you.
Thank you.
How did we get Honey? Honey, that's a beautiful name. And he was such he was the baby and he was the sweetest. And I was thinking everybody, he was the youngest of 8 children in Missouri. And so they just called him Honey. His real name was James Craddock. But so he got the name Honey, and everybody, his sisters, he had a lot of sisters and they loved us.
So the books are available at the front counter.
Oh, books. This is the I'm the artistic or whatever side of this business, but she's the one that's taking care of business. So please get books, get signed, take pictures, share pictures. We are small in number, but we are mighty, and we're going to share this book across the country. Yes, and we're going to stick around so we can take some pictures. I do want to take pictures, so thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, we don't have the. She don't have a Sharpie up there. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I haven't. You know what? I think my voice like, I'm gonna spend it in now and then I'm gonna. My sons, I voted on a Saturday, so I didn't have to wait. It was busy, but one of my sons, he didn't vote last week, he voted the other candidates. And I voted now. Wait, doesn't he get a bank? Yes. Yes, Donna.
Do you have some sort of announcements?
Oh,
Oh.
No,
yeah.
Yeah, just on phone. Okay.
huh?
The one hasn't changed, has always supposed.
If you like.
Oh, thank you. Oh. Oh, you want to get back here? I can't get back here. Makes sense. Yeah.
Please, if you share pictures, hashtag student parent.
Like she told me.
Thank you. Thank you. There we go. You know.
Yeah, they had them to be.
That way I
Okay, Aisha, AI.
It's a field of jobs, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. That's what you should do. STEM programs. But there's not a policy.
You're trying to awkwardly, let's do it again.
Trying to get Nicole to.
Make it fake handed.
Kinda got it. Yeah, there we go. All right, ready? 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Perfect. Good
It's not my green side, but. Thank you.
I'm gonna call my sister story.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes.
Yep, okay. Yes. Hey, my sister is here. I know. They're gonna go love you for that.
You're like, but every time I say no, they're making. And now.
It's a.
Yeah, I was.
It's in the. There's a design. Let's put it up.
I've been here for a while. Yeah.
That's a different thing. You're just trying to get everything set. Now we would just gonna walk out the side. And then she's gonna walk out the side.
Okay. Okay.
What's
your name? Penny.
And hire it.
You're just locking it.
Started in 2017.
And then like.
Oh, right. Oh, no. Okay. Which one? Is it me? Yeah, that's me. I used to be the
That's right, let me know.
So mine have a started in 2017. I started. Okay. So you like you make a way. I was like, that's you.
Like you were just a baby.
Girl, Satan was allergic to me. Literally, I was like, so it's just like there. It's a volunteer. I'm not saying Tammy. Like no, I don't think.
That's great.
Yes, like anyone that were friends with, if they were like.
Awesome. So you were one of the first volunteers?
Yes.
That's great.
Yeah,
Yes.
one of the first. I was a child care
You have a
volunteer.
few minutes to talk to me?
Yeah,
Oh, okay, come over.
See? I told you. Now, before you said I gave you a heads up. Yes, because I get elected. Look at we're so. Oh, yes. We should definitely.
So that's obvious. But mine was in the basement. Hers was in the.
Thank you.
Oh my goodness.
Okay.